Good morning. Today is going to span 2 days. We've got some canning projects we need to tackle today. We're going to weigh this year's potato harvest. We're going to run out into the garden and do a bunch of harvesting. We're going to bring that stuff inside, put it up for winter use, and then we're going to do some maintenance out in the garden. It's going to be a really fun day. Thanks for joining me. I just got dinner in the oven, and I'm going to see if I can can these cherries in the time it takes for my dinner to bake. So this is going to be the fastest canning project known to mankind if I can pull this off. I have never canned cherries before, so what I'm going to do is I am going to can them according to the directions in my favorite canning book. Many of you guys have this book, so if you don't, I'll link it down below. But I am going to follow the recipe on page 146, and I'm gonna do the raw pack method to make this quick and easy, which means I need to make some simple syrup. And I'm gonna make a light simple syrup, so I'm gonna follow this ratio here, but because I only have a little bit of cherries, I'm gonna cut this recipe down by quite a bit. So I'm gonna get some water onto boil. This is what I'm actually gonna can my cherries in because I'm using little jars. They should fit in this, and then I have my rubber thing on the bottom so the jars aren't going to be sitting on the bottom of my pot. And then over here, we're going to make our simple syrup, which is just sugar and water. And we're going to have that come to a boil until basically we just want this sugar to dissolve. The part that's going to take the longest for this recipe is going to be me pitting these cherries. Now, I do not have a cherry pitter. I've never canned cherries before. This is my first time, and if I like it, and I'm gonna do a bunch of them next year, I will invest in a cherry pitter. But I just kind of made up my own cherry pitter here. I have a large bobby pin that I ran through the dishwasher when I washed my jars. And it works pretty well to get the pit out. I did reshape it though. I made a little loop at the end of the bobby pin so that I can kind of get up underneath the pit. Now what I want to use these canned cherries for, because I'm going to can them in little tiny jars, is actually for garnishing, basically like a little maraschino cherry. Now I could not find if you could add almond extract to canned cherries during the canning process and make it a safe product to eat. So if you all know if you can add extracts to fruits, that would be fantastic to let me know. But what I'm gonna do is when I open one of these jars, I'll probably just put a few drops of almond extract so that I can use these like maraschino cherries. And I've got a good system to remove these pits. I go up underneath the pit and I can feel the pit in there. Well, this one's not as ripe, so it's a little bit harder to do, of course. But I just kind of roll it up underneath the pit and then it pops right out. This is actually working really, really well. So I have my hot syrup here. I'm going to transfer it to this measuring cup because it's going to be easier to pour into my jars. Now I use organic sugar. That's why, I don't want to get sugar sauce on my lids and rings. That's why it's not clear, because it's just a raw cane sugar. I don't know if it's raw or not. I just know that it's not bleached. So there we've got some of our syrup in our jar. And now I'm just going to put our cherries in there. I don't know how many jars I'm going to get. So I was able to get 3 half pints. So this might be the smallest canning project I have ever done, but I want to see if we enjoy this. And if I do, we'll do more of this next year. But this is kind of an experiment. I don't think I need much more than this because we really only use these for garnish. But this coming year will kind of be our test. In these 2 jars, I put the most pristine looking cherries in. In this jar, I put the cherries that I kind of broke. Some of them are perfect in here, but this one has more broken ones in it. So I'm gonna mark the top of this one, just so that when I go to open these, I know what I'm getting myself into. I'm gonna put a little mark on here. And it looks like I need to fill this up with more water. This water is very warm. The contents of my jars are the same temperature as about the water. I'm gonna cover this until it covers my jars. I just had to transfer those jars into a bigger pot just because I couldn't quite get enough water covering my cherry jars. Now I'm gonna let this process for 25 minutes once it comes to a boil. The book says that both pints and quarts need to process for the same amount of time, and these are half pints. Whenever you're canning in a smaller jar and it doesn't give directions for that size jar, then I always process it for the larger jar or the next jar size up. So these are half pints, so I'm gonna process them for the same amount of time I would process a pint for. So once this comes to a boil, we will set our timer for 25 minutes. While those cherries are processing, I'm gonna get some other projects buttoned up. Before I had started canning those cherries, I had actually put dinner in the oven, so you can kind of see behind me, there is some mess on the kitchen counter. So because I have dinner in the oven, I have my cherries processing, I am going to go ahead and get the kitchen cleaned and put back together. So by the time the cherries are done, my dinner's done, I can have a clean kitchen. I also am going to wash up some eggs. We had had a couple days of rain, which means that the chicken eggs come in dirty, and I like to wash them kind of all at once when I can so that I can pop them in the fridge and they are ready to go clean for me when I need to use them. I also emptied the freeze dryer. I had a big load of zucchini in the freeze dryer and some liver treats for my dogs, so I get that put away. And in the time it took me to clean the kitchen, put the freeze dryer stuff away, and wash all the eggs, my cherries were done and ready to go. So it's now going to be the next day, and we're going to go downstairs and weigh the potato harvest. And cherries are a new item for me, so I got to figure out where I'm going to put them. I want to put them, this is fruits here, this is beans and broths and potatoes and veggies, and then that whole shelf over there is tomatoes. So I'm going to put them somewhere in this shelf, maybe down here, right there. So I think I'll just weigh all my potatoes, and I'm not going to worry about trying to keep them separated by variety. I'm more concerned about keeping them separated by size. And so what I'm going to do now is organize these potatoes by their size. So here are the potatoes organized by size. These are the ones that are damaged, green, or just need to be thrown away, and or we'll eat them. So I'm going to bring those upstairs, but first I want to weigh all these potatoes. I'm gonna have to write this down, but this says 37 pounds, 2 ounces, 26.8. So here is 2024's potato harvest, and then there is the garlic. This is the garlic I'm gonna be planting, so I put it up here so that I remember not to use it, and that's what we're gonna eat from. So the total weight that I just weighed with the 2 crates in the box was 82 pounds, minus about 13 pounds of the weight of the crates in the cardboard box gives us about 69-ish pounds of potatoes. But what that does not take into account is probably about the 15 pounds of potatoes we've already eaten. And I didn't bother weighing these ones because I'm gonna bring them upstairs, and some of them I just need to throw away anyway. So we probably have about a total of 80-ish pounds of potatoes from this year, which is fantastic. That is the perfect amount of potatoes for us. Last year we did 2 beds, and I think we were at about 150 to 160 pounds of potatoes, and that was just a little too many potatoes for us. I did end up having to gift a lot of potatoes away, which is not a bad problem to have, but it did get a little bit stressful. I wanted to make sure they got used before they went bad. But because I had been researching some different ways to freeze potatoes where they don't turn brown, I'm kind of excited to try that. So maybe next year I'll want to grow more potatoes. I don't know. What I do know though is it's time to go harvest some tomatoes, and we've got a couple garden projects we need to tackle today as well. So it feels good to have the potatoes taken care of because I want to harvest my black beans in about a week, and I'm going to cure these black beans right where I cured the potatoes. So now I'm going to harvest tomatoes. I am so glad I remembered to plant cherry tomatoes. I didn't start any cherry tomatoes when I was starting my tomatoes because I just forgot. And so I had to pick these up at the farmer's market, these plants. And because it's been so cold, not cold, but just not seasonably warm, I have been inundated with cherry tomatoes, thankfully, and not slicing tomatoes. We'll get there. There's probably 100 huge tomatoes out there that are green, but we're not able to eat them fresh yet. And so I'm grateful that we got these cherry tomatoes planted. And I'm harvesting about this much every other day. And we've just been eating a tremendous amount of cherry tomatoes. And thankfully there's a lot more where this came from, because I have not been able to put up any tomatoes yet this year. My favorite way, my new favorite way that we've been eating these cherry tomatoes, if you watched when I had that garlic dinner party, I marinated the tomatoes and I put those on literally everything. We have them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner almost every day, and they're fantastic. But the way I like to preserve cherry tomatoes is to freeze them whole. I don't do anything to them, and then I can make baked pasta dishes with the cherry tomatoes, and they're just full of beautiful flavor. And you don't have to do anything to preserve them other than wash them, take the stems off, and freeze them, which is my kind of food preservation project. I generally let most of my tomatoes ripen on the vine, but what I've noticed, here's a prime example, these Aunt Marzanos, they tend to fall off the vine, or some sort of critter is knocking them off the vine. I'm not sure. So when they start to turn red, tomatoes ripen from the inside out. I pull them and they will ripen inside. This tomato looks like it could come in. And then here is just a little example of all these beautiful green tomatoes that I have. Look how big that is. This one's just starting to blush. I mean, look at the size of that. Huge. So we've had a couple tomato sandwiches, but not a crazy amount like we normally would at this point. So these are supposed to be a really sweet pepper. So what I think I might do for dinner tonight is just fry those up and eat them with some marinated tomatoes. So that brings us to this bed. So it's been about 2 weeks since we harvested the potatoes and planted out this bed. And you can see some of it is doing really well. Here we have spinach. I have not preserved spinach in probably 2 years. Here we had about 4 different varieties of kale. Hardly anything has sprouted. I see about 5 sprouts in this whole section. That seed was about 4 years old, so I think it was pretty old and not great. Radishes here looking great, and then some dill down here that's starting to sprout. So what I'm gonna do is plant some more seed. I figured 2 weeks is long enough to give it a good go, and if nothing came up, see, oh, here's a kale sprout, there's a kale sprout. So I'll leave those there. So I'll put kale here. I'm gonna plant all the kale seeds I have because I don't think I bought kale seeds this year. So they're old. And then here, I'm gonna plant more spinach. So we'll have a second succession of spinach. And my goal is to freeze a lot of this spinach, because I like putting spinach in pasta dishes as well, because then it's an easy way to do a one-pot dinner. You just throw some spinach in it and call it good for the day. Okay, I only ended up doing one variety of kale here, and then I'm going to leave these two little kale plants. Because spinach is such a fast growing plant and it'll grow in the cold temperatures, I'm going to leave this section right here empty, and in about a week or two I'll come out and I'll plant the rest of that seed packet. And now we're going to go harvest some green beans. But before we can do that, this zucchini needs to be picked. I might have some more tomatoes to pick. I see some down here that have just fallen. Not sure why my tomatoes are doing that this year. So I'm going to bring those inside. All these tomatoes need to be washed, obviously. So I'm going to start a bag in my freezer, where as tomatoes get ripe, like the Roma tomatoes, and I'll just throw them in my freezer. And then when I have a big batch of them, then I will do a big tomato processing day. It's just crazy that I haven't had to do a tomato processing day yet. So here are the green beans we're gonna harvest. These are rattlesnake green beans, and I do have these planted over there, and I'm growing them for the seed. But these ones I'm actually growing for the green bean because they taste absolutely delicious. So about every other day I come out here. It looks like I missed this one, so it's a little bit more mature than I'd like to see. I harvest green beans for us to eat for dinner. A couple of these got a little mature. I think I'm going to pick them because I don't want this plant to think that it's done doing its job. They just might not quite be as tender, but they'll still be delicious. So another thing I've been eating with almost every meal, tomatoes and green beans. I like to throw these in the air fryer. If you're wondering if I still love my air fryer, I do. And you can throw green beans in the air fryer with some protein, and I have a very fast and delicious lunch. I usually will throw some chicken in the air fryer at the same time, and I will top the chicken and the green beans with marinated tomatoes, and it is fantastic. I'm finally getting something to grow all the way up my arch trellises. These green beans are doing a fantastic job, and my pumpkin over there is doing a fantastic job, which is making me so happy. Now, my question is, I'm not sure how I'm going to harvest green beans when they get to that high. I have more green beans planted other places that are a bush bean variety, so I might end up just letting those ones go to seed, and I'll harvest them as pinto beans. So now I want to see if I have any other zucchinis. Oh, yep, there's a big one. I broke part of it, but that's okay because I'm going to go inside and shred it and freeze dry it. Got two little ones in there. I'll let those go one more day. I feel like I'm getting the perfect amount of zucchini this year. We are eating a ton of zucchini, and I'm able to freeze dry a lot of zucchini, but I'm not being overwhelmed with zucchini, which is fantastic. I broke that one too. It does help to bring scissors or a knife to cut them off. If you want to keep these in your fridge for a week or so, it's best not to break them like that. So I am pretty happy with this harvest. I'm getting about this many zucchinis and this many tomatoes every other day or so. So it's still a huge abundance, but I'm happy with now I've got this many tomatoes, I can actually start putting up tomatoes. It looks like I left these eggs here. I grabbed these from the chickens this morning, so I'm gonna bring these inside too. So I just grabbed a freeze dryer tray. I'm gonna set these eggs over here. If you don't wash your chicken eggs, they can sit out at room temperature and you can use them. I always wash them right before I use them, but I don't have to put them in the fridge. So here you can see I've harvested these tomatoes yesterday. So between yesterday's and today's, we are now finally at a point where I am getting more tomatoes than we can eat fresh in a week. And I'm super happy about that. I'm just gonna set this over here for now. And I'm gonna go ahead and rinse off my zucchini. I'm gonna process all 3 of these zucchinis because I have about 4 little zucchinis out in the garden. I know that in a day or 2, I'll be able to harvest those. So if we want fresh zucchini, I can just grab zucchini. But what I'm probably gonna wanna eat fresh are these green beans more than zucchini in the next day or 2. So I'm gonna grab my other zucchinis that I already have washed in my fridge, and I'm just gonna do this by hand real quick. I have a freeze dryer tray. I'm gonna grate this right onto the freeze dryer tray, and I'm gonna turn this into zucchini flour that I can use for anything and everything. It's fantastic. I use it to thicken sauces. You can kind of use it in place of wheat flour. Not 100%, but you can add it to baked goods. If you saw that, we made bread and pie crust using it, and it's pretty delicious. And I've only gotten 3 trays so far of freeze-dried shredded zucchini, so I need to get more of this in my freezer. I got 2 full large trays full of zucchini, and now I'm gonna process the cherry tomatoes. I'm gonna throw these in the freezer because I don't have a full freeze dryer load, so I don't want to turn my freeze dryer on until I have a full freeze dryer load. So now I have a bag here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just throw the equivalent of what would be enough for 1 baked pasta, because I don't have that many cherry tomatoes, and I wanna make sure I get a few more marinated ones in my fridge because I know that I'll run out of those probably today. So I wanna get a couple more of those in there. And this is kind of how I tackle when I have just a bunch of random little harvests. I mean, these are abundant harvests, but when I'm not doing, this one's got a big crack in it, I'm gonna give to the chickens. When I'm not doing like a massive canning day or something like that, when I just have a bunch of random different types of veggies to take care of, this is kind of how I tackle it. I washed up the peppers and the tomatoes that need to ripen up. I just threw those on the windowsill. I need to dry them off still, but I'm just gonna let them ripen on the windowsill. Normally at this time, I have a huge table in my kitchen that I have to ripen tomatoes on, but I don't have that many tomatoes coming in yet. I think I may have made this bag too small, so I'm gonna make another one that's larger. I'll save that one. I'll use it for something else. Perfect for 1 dinner of baked pasta. These tomatoes I think I want to ripen for about a day or so. So I'm just gonna throw these in this basket, and then I'm gonna wash up my green beans so that when I go to use these green beans, they're already washed and I don't have to wash them, because I probably will have these in the next day or so. I already had this bag of green beans in the fridge from yesterday, and I'm just gonna throw these beans in here. I reuse my freezer Ziploc bags when I'm using them for fresh produce from the garden. Just like this one. This already had peppers in it, and I processed the peppers yesterday. So I washed this bag out, let it air dry. Now I'm gonna get these peppers in it. And get these in the fridge, this in the freezer, and my zucchini in the freezer. So I got all those goodies out in the freezer. There's one more thing I want to tackle today. I just want to go ahead and put all of these things away so that when I come in, I don't have to deal with all of them. So the next thing I want to tackle are these greenstalk pots. If you saw a bunch of stuff out in the garden that was tipped over, it's because we had a huge storm. And so 1 greenstalk fell over. That's the first time in 4 growing seasons that I've had one fall over. And so what I need to do is take care of this. So this morning I started this project and then life happened, so I had to abandon it. But what we're gonna do is clean up these green stalks. Some of these things are done for the season. Like this is parsley that's gone to seed. That parsley is going to seed. The curly leaf parsley is looking beautiful. The nasturtiums are done. The tarragon is done. And so I'm going to clean up all of these pots and we're gonna get them replanted. But first I need to clean them up. So I just grabbed a pair of scissors because this morning I was trying to just yank everything out and it wasn't working very well. And it looks like this tarragon is gonna grow back from the stem because there's a bunch of shoots that I can see coming out, which is great because the stuff I just harvested has gone to seed. So it probably is not gonna hurt it to get a haircut. I'm gonna give this parsley a haircut too. That looks better. I'm gonna leave the lemongrass alone. This parsley might come back. So I'm just gonna cut it back. So I need this wheelbarrow to put compost in. I started this project the other day and then we went live, so I had to stop it. But in that windstorm, all my cosmos fell over, and so I need to clean this mess up. I've already cleaned back there. They will regrow. You can see how far I cut them back here, but they won't regrow if they stay in this mess. It's not the prettiest bed from this angle, but over here from this angle, it still looks really nice, and it actually looks better without all those overgrown, fallen over cosmos. And it's definitely giving the eucalyptus a lot more space. Next year, I will only grow dwarf varieties of cosmos. My game plan for these greenstock pots that had the herbs in them is to actually try to propagate strawberries. So you can see to the left here, there is a greenstock with tons of strawberries on it, and there's probably 100 strawberry baby plants. About a week or two ago, we had tried to propagate strawberries together, but I made a grave error in that endeavor, and I cut the baby plants off the mother plants before rooting them out. And about half of them probably are not going to make it. I think some of them are going to make it, and I'll show you what they look like after about a week and a half since they have been transplanted. So what I was thinking with these green stalks is I am going to just line them around the base of the green stalk with the strawberries in it, and I am going to take the strawberry babies and I'm just going to put tons of little babies in these green stalks, and I'm going to let them root out and grow out in here. And then at some point, probably next spring, I will go through and transplant them so that they're not overcrowded in this green stalk and I can actually stack it back up. But my thought is I'm going to let them root out in this soil before I then can cut the babies off the mother plants. They're pretty crowded in there, but I think they're going to be okay, and they're going to do better than what I did 2 weeks ago. So here we have our new experiment. We'll see how well these strawberry babies do. I've got one full wheelbarrow here, but I think I'm ready to call this green stalk too for the season. I'm seeing signs of disease on it. You can see it looks like these, I mean, they still have flowers to them, but I think it's time to clean this up because we're going to be decorating up here with pumpkins in not too long. This pot with the calibrachoa and this white flower, and I can't remember what this is called. Looks fantastic. And so just that next to that, I think I want just this pot here. There's a plane going overhead, so that's what that noise is. But one thing I didn't show you is this snapdragon that I planted over here by the patio, and it's doing fantastic. But this has seen better days. So here you can see what the petunias are looking like. Lots of disease, but look at this calibrachoa. I've already thought that next year I'm gonna do a whole green stalk and just calibrachoa, but these look so good still. So I think next year that is the plan. What color yet? I'm not sure, but definitely calibrachoa. Well, I have to say, that's looking a lot neater there. I'm really excited about this green stalk experiment. The strawberries over here are looking okay. I think I'm probably gonna lose about half of them from breaking them off the mother plant, but some look really good. Well, really good might be an overstatement, but some don't look terrible. So this one looks like it might survive, maybe this one, that one, this one, probably not. But I do have a bunch of babies that are attached, and as I can pull them from these mother plants, I will just stick them in here. So I'm really excited to get all of these things checked off my list. It's those little things that, you know, tend to stack up and start to feel overwhelming to me. I mean, I can tackle a huge preservation day or a 30-person dinner party. Really seems less overwhelming to me because I know the big tasks that I have on hand. But when all these little tiny tasks start to stack up, that's when I get overwhelmed. And so today just felt really great to just check some of those things off the list so that when we've got these really big food preservation projects that are gonna be coming up, the tomatoes and the corn, I'm picking up 75 ears of corn this coming weekend and we're gonna be processing it together. The tomatoes are probably 2 weeks out before we're gonna start doing big tomato processing days. And then I have some friends coming over and I'm making a dinner for them. It's not a huge party. There's only, I think, like 6 of us. I have to confirm with everybody, but it's gonna be a delicious harvest themed dinner. Again, I'm really looking forward to it. So if you're new, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out. If you've been here before, thank you for taking time again out of your day to spend time with me. I greatly appreciate every single one of you. I'll pop some videos here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I hope you're having a fantastic day and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.